Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am so pumped to be guiding you through this today because we're embarking on a culinary journey through the massive, absolutely fascinating world of cheese. Okay, let's dive into this and decode exactly what makes your absolute favorite cheeses so uniquely delicious.
Thousands, literally thousands. It's kind of an overwhelming reality, isn't it? Around the world, right now, there are thousands of cheese varieties being crafted, aged, and, well, eaten. If you've ever stood frozen at the deli counter or stared blankly at a massive gourmet dairy section and felt a sudden wave of anxiety, hey, your feelings are completely validated by that massive number.
So, that brings us to the ultimate question. How do you actually choose? When you're faced with thousands of options, choice paralysis is a very real thing. Like, how do you know what's going to work best on a sandwich, what's going to melt perfectly, or what to serve when you have guests over? Well, you need a system, a simple, practical framework to just cut right through all that noise.
And this brilliantly illustrates our solution. It's basically a simple mental map for the rest of this explainer, and frankly, for the rest of your grocery trips. We can take all those thousands of varieties and organize them purely by texture. We're talking fresh, soft-ripened, semi-hard, hard, blue-veined, and brined. Once you get the texture, you get the cheese. So let's walk through these step by step. We're going to start our sensory tour nice and gentle with the fresh cheeses. These are the softest, most mild varieties you're going to encounter. Think about mozzarella. It's soft, it's wonderfully mild, and crucially, it is super stretchy. That stretchy texture is exactly why it's the undisputed champion of pizza. And actually, it gets that unique stretch because the cheese curds are heated and physically kneaded in hot water while it's being made. Then, on the totally opposite end of the fresh spectrum, you've got cottage cheese. It shares that same mild flavor profile, but it's defined by its very distinct, lumpy texture. Sticking with this soft and fresh vibe, let's look at two absolute household heroes. First up, ricotta. Fun fact here, ricotta actually translates to recooked in Italian, which perfectly explains its wonderfully fluffy texture since it's actually made from leftover whey. That fluffiness makes it insanely versatile. It completely pulls double duty as a star ingredient in rich desserts and in savory baked pasta dishes. Then, of course, we have cream cheese. Its soft, totally spreadable nature makes it an everyday hero. Whether you're smearing it on a morning bagel or using it as the foundational base for a massive cheesecake, its texture literally dictates exactly how we use it. Moving down our framework, we hit the soft ripened category. Now, this is where things start to get a bit more decadent. The absolute defining characteristic here is having an edible rind that holds in a beautifully soft, gooey, creamy interior. And the two absolute superstars of this category? That'd be brie and camembert. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is comparing these two heavyweights. Structurally, they look incredibly alike, but there is a distinct difference when you actually eat them. Brie is famous for being the soft, creamy cheese perfectly wrapped in that signature edible white rind. Now, camembert is structurally super similar to brie, but if you do a side-by-side taste test, you'll immediately notice camembert packs a much richer, earthier flavor. And that's actually due to the specific, different mold strains used during its aging process. So it's the exact same texture family, but a totally different flavor experience. All right, let's shift gears a bit. We're transitioning out of the soft, creamy world and stepping into the hearty, everyday staples. We're talking about the semi-hard cheeses. This is a super robust category, packed full of familiar favorites that, honestly, you probably have sitting in your fridge right now. Let's rapidly fire through some of the heavy hitters. First up in our semi-hard lineup is Swiss. Beyond those iconic holes, which, by the way, are actually called eyes and are created by completely harmless gas-producing bacteria while the cheese ages, Swiss brings a perfectly mild and uniquely nutty flavor to the table. Next, we've got Gouda. Sticking with that semi-hard texture, Gouda really distinguishes itself by being remarkably smooth on the palate with a slightly sweet flavor profile. And what's really cool is that as it ages, it loses moisture and actually develops these incredible, crunchy caramel notes right throughout the block. It's so good. And then, obviously, we have cheddar. This might just be the most versatile cheese of the entire bunch. It's got a firm texture and spans a massive flavor spectrum. You can find it delightfully mild, or you can get it incredibly sharp. That sharpness transformation happens thanks to a unique block stacking process during production, literally called cheddaring. Because of this firm, super adaptable nature, it's absolutely fantastic for stacking in sandwiches and, honestly, for all kinds of everyday cooking. Keeping the pace up, let's look at Monterey Jack. It's a mild, semi-hard cheese, but its absolute, undisputed superpower is that it melts incredibly well. It melts like a dream because it retains a very high moisture content compared to other aged cheeses. So, if a recipe ever calls for a smooth, melty blanket of cheese, Monterey Jack is your go-to, for sure. Finally, to round out our semi-hard rapid fire, we've got provolone. This semi-hard Italian classic comes in two distinct varieties. You've got a sweet version and a sharper, aged version. It's a massive favorite, usually found heavily layered into those huge, hearty deli sandwiches. Okay, let's slow the pace down for just a second, because we have officially arrived at the firmest texture on our map: hard cheese. And the prime example here, Parmesan. The real defining factor of Parmesan is that it is heavily, heavily aged. That aging process slowly draws out the moisture and creates a really dense, hard texture. Because it's so hard, it isn't really meant to be sliced or melted down in chunks. Instead, it's usually grated heavily over pasta to deliver these amazing, concentrated bursts of flavor. Let's move on and see how this builds as we enter the absolutely most intense, bold flavor profiles of our whole culinary journey: the blue-veined cheeses. Honestly, the name tells you exactly what you need to know. Blue cheese is defined visually by those distinctive blue mold veins running right through the block, which, by the way, are often introduced by a specific mold called Penicillium roquefetti. Functionally, it is known for delivering a massive, strong-flavored punch. It's bold, it's intense, and it absolutely commands attention on whatever plate it's on. To completely round out the extreme ends of the flavor spectrum, we have to talk about the bold and brined options. Look at feta. This is your absolute classic brined cheese. Traditionally, it's made from sheep's milk, which gives it a texture that is notoriously beautifully crumbly. And its intensely salty flavor comes directly from the fact that it is preserved and aged in a literal saltwater brine. Then, right beside it, we've got goat cheese. Made directly from goat's milk, it offers a completely different experience. It presents this really bright, tangy flavor profile that's paired with a surprisingly creamy texture. So, the crucial point is this. When we pull all this information together, mastering the cheeseboard and really mastering the kitchening isn't about memorizing thousands of individual cheeses. No way. It's about understanding that this massive variety can be entirely simplified just by texture. As you've seen, each type has its own distinct flavor, its own texture, and its own best use case. From the perfect stretch of a fresh mozzarella right down to the hard grate of an aged Parmesan, understanding this basic taxonomy directly empowers you to make exactly the right choice for cooking or serving. Which brings us to the end of our explainer and leaves us with one highly delicious question. Armed with this awesome new framework, the next time you're craving something sharp, something stretchy, or something crumbly, what's starring on your next cheese board? Thanks for joining me on this culinary breakdown, and I highly encourage you to take this knowledge straight to the grocery store. Happy tasting!